Here we go. Hello, 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 hello. It is Saturday, and I appreciate you're all joining me. Just have to move my little control panel out of the way. All right, here I am. Thanks for joining me. It's interesting that the work that I do is working with schools in order to redesign instruction, to put students in charge of their own learning. And one of the goals that I always have is that in schools, I believe that we should be teaching students from what I call a felt need. People learn best when they have a felt need to learn. And it's interesting because I think you're here today because the pandemic has definitely created a felt need on the part of educators to figure out what to do and on the part of parents to figure out what to do. So I thought I would do a webinar and maybe offer you guys some ideas through what I'm calling 8 elements of home-based learning. Now you'll notice I'm not calling it homeschooling because in homeschooling, the parent is actually responsible for the academics. Home-based learning is where the school is responsible for the academics, but you still have your students learning at home. And so there are certain things that you can do to make that better and easier on children. And don't underestimate the power of this pandemic. Some of you might have students who are actually happy to be home for a while. Some of you I know actually have students currently on spring break, so it's no different for them right now. Some of you might have students that are starting to complain, but I think what's happened is the longer, in the beginning, it's like, okay, it's a thing, but the longer this goes on, the more stress your children are going to feel. And because they're not able to go out and play with their friends. They're home all the time. If they have siblings, they're all either stuck in together or it's good to be together, who knows? But you can do a lot to help alleviate that stress, which that's so important because sadly, we are defined by what happens to us in our childhood. And this will stick with some kids, through the ages. So the more we can do to make this just a really easy transition to home-based learning, the better. That's what we're here for. So I have written a few books on this issue of putting students in charge of their own learning. And quite honestly, when we work in schools where teachers are putting students in charge of their own learning, it frees the teacher up to truly be a facilitator of learning. And for you at home, if you put your students in charge of their own learning, it'll just free you up. So it's a good thing to do. I've designed an instructional model called LATIC. If you're a tweeter, you can learn more about it on #LATIC. And again, it's all about a learner active, technology-infused classroom. The fun thing for me is that I've been doing this work for I think I invented this about 40 years ago, and it's evolved over the years. But I'm having LATIC teachers now reach out to me and say, Nance, I'm so glad I'm a LATIC teacher because this was such an easy transition for me to just jump over into home-based learning because the kids already take responsibility for their learning. So I think that's an important key as you as parents are working with your students, children at home, is don't do too much for them, but create the structures to enable them to take charge of everything. I just had heard from some students who are actually making themselves their own schedules for the weekend. Why not just continue? So that's a wonderful thing. What I like to say is when my work is about partnering with school districts to position students to change the world. And I love the work I do. I work with a wonderful team of consultants and we work with some amazing schools and school districts. So I want to assure you this, the schools are pedaling as fast as they can to make this work. Depending on the school district, there are some school districts that may be one-to-one, students already have laptops at home, it's no big deal. For other school districts, maybe students don't all have laptops. Now we have to figure that out. In high poverty areas, they don't have the money to have computers at home or internet access. Schools have to figure that out because the deal is they can't provide instruction remotely unless it can be equitable. So that means every student would have to have access. And there are big city districts that are actually making deals with cable providers and computer companies in order to get this happening. I think when this first hit, the thought was, we'll close schools for a couple of weeks. If we have a case, we have to close for a couple of weeks to disinfect, we'll be back again. So schools sent home packets or, beginning lists of resources students could use. But now I think everyone is realizing this could go longer than we expected and longer than we want, because some schools, some school districts in the country are talking about closing for the rest of the year. Okay, so parents, now that you've picked yourself up off the floor, we can do this. This is going to work. This is going to work. So depending on how long you're going to be the one who is overseeing home-based learning, I've got 8 elements to help you through. But please know, at times like these, we can all get frustrated with one another. You can get frustrated with your school district. You have no idea what's going on behind the scenes. There's plenty going on. And so as the schools are redesigning and reinventing themselves, we realize too, you're kind of reinventing yourself as well. So keep that in mind as we all try to positively move forward and just put in place some of these good elements that could make things work for your students. Okay, the first, school is highly structured. Students come in, there may be bells, they put their belongings in certain places, they may sit in certain desks or select areas to work based on what they're doing. There's a time for lunch, it's often the same time every day. If they're in middle and high school, they move from class to class. There's a lot of structure in schools. And as human beings, we actually like structure. Structure makes us feel comfortable, secure. And so it's going to be important to create structures at home that you may not have had before. Because typically when students come home, depending on the structures a parent might want to put in place, there may be some and there may be not, and it may just be welcome home from school and students kind of do what they want. It would be very detrimental to your children if you just kind of let them plan the day and do whatever they want, even at the high school level, because psychologically they just need somebody to provide some structures. So it can be simple things. For instance, how about a morning meeting? If you've got the time, because we realize too, you're also in many cases working from home. And so you may have meetings that you have to attend that even start before school starts. But if you have the opportunity, a morning meeting could be as short as a little check-in. So what are you planning on working on today? What are your goals for today? Or it could be a little longer where you actually have students writing in a journal. Pick one of your academic goals for the day. What's something you really want to tackle today that you're learning about? And then pick a work goal. Like, how do you want to become a better home-based learning student? And we are right now working on a rubric for the perfect home-based student. So once we get that done, we're going to get that out to you. But so it could be as complex or as simple as you want. But just that idea that every morning at this time, we're just meeting in the kitchen, even if it's just for elbow bumps, it's a structure. It's also important to make sure you set up what I'm calling remote learning zones. Do not let your children just roam around the house and decide to work anywhere. I mean, of course that's going to work. It doesn't provide them with that structure. So for younger students, set up a couple of places where they can work. Here's a desk. If you're going to be working on anything where you have to do writing, you should work at the desk. But you can work over here on the couch if you are doing reading or playing a computer game, something like that. You could also work at the dining room table with your siblings if you just feel like you'd rather be working with somebody else around. But identify why you would work in each place. And for older students, even for high school students, just say to them, let's just think about how this home-based learning environment is going to work. Where do you feel like it would be good for you to work if you are reading a book, if you are writing, if you are working on your computer, and come up with some distinct physical places. Please make sure you include a quiet zone, because not everybody can work with noise around them. So for instance, you could say, if you are going to work together at the dining room table, everybody has to be quiet and you're just working on your own work, but we're in the same room. If you want to collaborate, then go over into the playroom or another area of the house where you could collaborate and be noisier working together. So that's up to you, but definitely create those remote learning zones. Now, scheduling. I believe all students and adults should schedule how they're going to use their time first thing in the morning for the rest of the day. I might say at the kindergarten level and the first grade level, maybe schedule up to lunch and then schedule after lunch. It can be as simple as, if you look on the left, this is one of our consultants who has a kindergarten student, And she's basically put up at the top, you know, you got to get up and make your bed and brush your teeth and all those good things. And then you're going to do 30 minutes of something that has to do with mindfulness. Then you're going to head into math. And she just creates that whole schedule that way. That's a good way to start because, again, students are coming from, you know, school where they have this kind of schedule to now home-based where it could be all over the place. Give them that structure. As the weeks go on, you can move more toward, and with older students, you can move more toward what I have over here on the right. This is another one of our IDE children at home, and I really do have to give a shout out to all of our IDE parents and kids because they've been providing me with lots of photo ops. But what I challenge the students to do once they hit 2nd grade and up is literally put together a schedule of when they plan to accomplish each thing. So stop, take a look at the day. What is your school district sending you? Is it online learning that you have some choices as to when to do things? In some cases, the students might not have choices. The school might dictate at this time we're providing this instruction, et cetera. But if there is that ability to just decide when you want to work, have your students create a schedule. Now, the fun thing about a schedule, and I would recommend parents do this as well, and all you teachers and administrators out there, did you ever work through the day where, you know, you get up in the morning and you're ready to go, you got lots of things you're going to accomplish, and then you start working. And, you know, you work through one thing and that's done and you're like, okay, feeling good. And you work through the next one and, you know, feeling good. When you get to the end of the day and you're like, oh my God, like, you know, I worked all day. I didn't even have a break, but like I didn't accomplish everything I wanted to accomplish. It's because when you just keep moving forward and you don't look at your destination, you have no way of gauging your progress. So by creating a schedule, you basically said, this is the destination. I plan to do all of this today, and then we'll see, you know, where we go from here. Then at the end of the day, have the children reflect on their schedules. How did it go? Because this is a great opportunity to talk to them about thinking about time. You know, you had put down here, it would take you 20 minutes to do this, but it took you 40. So why do you think it took 40? And it may be that the student says, well, this was actually harder than I thought it would be. Okay, great. So let's think about that in the future when you're deciding, you know, how easy or hard do you think this will be? Or it might be, well, my friends kept texting me and interrupting me. Okay, so you see how when your friends are texting you and interrupting you, you're not as productive. Because productivity means I got the job done, but in a shorter period of time. And so you can talk with your children about how they can better schedule their time. Now, the nice thing, and I'm hearing this from our consultants who have children at home who are now essentially in laddie classrooms here, they are saying that, you know, they don't have to do a thing. Their kids are off running through their schedule for the day, too busy to even talk to their parents. So a schedule can really be a good structure. It empowers kids and it also allows you to have some breathing room. I will say you need to be flexible because every now and then I notice there's been some authors that are doing live reads at a particular time. If you hear about that, you want to be able to say to your child, hey, I see you've got this on your schedule, but you know, so-and-so is doing a live read. Would you like to be a part of that? Be flexible in terms of what might pop up that they have opportunities to do. And then be a little creative. You know, a lot of students go to school where they say the Pledge of Allegiance first thing in the morning. So in this family, the kids are saying the Pledge of Allegiance first thing in the morning. A lot of students pack a lunch. Maybe you pack it for them, but a lot of students pack a lunch to go off to school. Keep that going. Let's get together, you and your child, pack for lunch in the morning, put it in the refrigerator. At lunchtime, you don't have the student again in an unstructured way opening the refrigerator saying like, what should I get? What do I need? Or depending on you at that time to get it for them. Put that in, build it right away, put it away in the fridge. Just that little structure, believe it or not, will help your students psychologically and emotionally to have these things in place that they'll be missing by not being in a school. Now, I love a good project, and the work that we do in designing learner-active classrooms always begins with a real-world problem to solve, because that provides the felt need. That energizes and engages kids. I want to do this. I was just playing around today with, we're actually designing a remote curriculum for a school, and we're using one of the problems that we're having kids solve is that now that they're home, they can't really be out at the playground. They can't be out at the playground with their friends. So how about designing your own online playground where you start going through what are all the different online games and learning activities, and you get to assemble your own playground with all of that in it. Just a project like that gets kids energized because it gives them what I call an anchor. It anchors all of the learning back to it. And you can be asking questions like, oh, I see that you learned, something. How is that going to relate to the project you're working on? And get the kids to constantly think, because all learning empowers us to be able to do something. So, projects allow us to bring it back. You can use real world problems like things like the plastic issues in the ocean. For older students, a great time to look at social media networks. You can use higher level math to calculate the power of a particular social media network. And they could do their own, but they could also look at, pick a company or pick an organization and kind of see, well, how many followers do they have? And then from their followers, how many followers do they have? And, again, use mathematics to figure out the strength of the network. There are all kinds of real world situations going on right now, including the pandemic itself. I would not recommend involving younger children in the pandemic because it can be scary, but definitely high school students and potentially middle school students could be looking at this through a number of lenses. How can we work to prevent pandemics in the future? How do we even, a lot of people are doing a lot more now with washing their hands and being mindful of germs. So we could even look at it from that, like how do we just remain healthy? And social distancing. How do we convince others they should be social distancing? Create a poster or something that you could put out on Facebook for them, or that you could tweet out. So there are a lot of projects that could come out of what's going on now. Just try to keep them positive and hopeful, because what your students need now is a sense of hope. And they may not look that way, and they may not act that way, but they do. They need a sense of hope that we're going to move beyond this and life will go back to normal. And that is what you need to give them. So pick projects that are more hopeful. Now, there's also interest-driven challenges, which if you can find a student's interest and tie it into the schoolwork that they're getting, that's great. For instance, in this case, one of our 6th grade IDE children, she wants to be an Imagineer with Disney. So she goes to Disney World a lot. And now she also just went to Disneyland for a special tour, so that she was able to see what Imagineers do. She was able to meet Imagineers. She was able to learn about the job. It was pretty phenomenal. And so her mom worked with her to come up with this task of, she is going to look at creating the portfolio for her path to being an Imagineer that she could even share with somebody at Disney. So you'll notice that in the middle there, she created her little path to Imagineering victory, and she's working away on that. And so, when you start looking at what the school is requiring students to do, her mom can keep asking her, so how does what you just learned here relate to you becoming a better Imagineer? So I'm not suggesting that you engage in projects that toss out what the school is asking students to do, but if the school is not giving the students real world problems or projects, come up with one with your child so that everything can kind of wrap into it. And you can simply say, well, what did you learn today? And how does that going to help you with whatever project you're working on? We use something called a design process to solve problems, where you start by formulating the problem and then exploring, which is the learning part, and then coming up with ideas, etc. We are going to post that on a website for you so that you will have access to it if that's something you want to use with your student. And quite honestly, anytime you have a challenge or a problem to handle in your household, use a design process. Where do we want to go on vacation? Use a design process. Should we get a pet? Use a design process. You can do a lot with, again, creating a structured method of thinking through solving a problem. Now, schools have lots of resources. Some of them you provide. Your child goes off to school with a backpack filled with things, pencil cases, whatever. But when they go to school, there are usually areas, cubbies, files, cabinets where they can go and pull out all of the things they need to be working. That's going to be really important. Now, you may think, well, we've got stuff all over the house. It's all accessible to them. The problem with that is in the moment when they're working on something and they're like, oh, I should put a sticky note on this page. Having them have to say, wait, where are the sticky notes? Mom, where are the sticky notes? Dad, where are the sticky notes? And kind of roaming all around cognitively from where the mind goes, you really just derailed them from what they were working on. So it's much better to put that together in advance. And you might do it with your child. You might say, let's get a shoebox, or let's get just an area where you are going to put all the kinds of materials you might need while you're learning. So let's just go around the house and find them all and stick them in there. Obviously, you're going to need a computer as well. And then another resource is shared technology, using a computer where you can connect with somebody else, because there are people out there who can serve as resources. As a matter of fact, you might even have, for instance, I would say to my IDE consultant who has the 6th grade Imagineer student, and I know she's listening in because she's here as my backup today. Why not say, you know, there might be somebody out there in the neighborhood, somebody I know who's an engineer. Let me hook you up for a video conference, and you can interview them. Come up with 5 questions you want to ask an engineer. So use technology to connect students socially with others, because of course we're kind of cut off a bit socially now, but you can find other adults that your student could interact with. And in many cases in the schools, if they have the platform set up, the students can actually be working with one another. So consider that resources aren't only the tangible goodies that you touch, but they can also be human resources. So downtime is going to be important for everybody. The other day, as we were scrambling to help one of our school districts, I think I just sat in the same chair for 4 hours. And I finally, one of my consultants, pinged in on a video conference and said, I hope you're moving around and drinking. And I was like, well, hydrating, he said. I just translated it to drinking. But I said, yes, it's like I haven't moved out of this chair for 4 hours. My butt hurts. And I think I need to do something here. So I think it's important for you to have your student build in that downtime. So in that schedule that they make, have them build in 10 minutes of downtime. Just get up, walk around, drink some water, relax. As a matter of fact, when you look at brain scans, if you sit and work for, say, 4 hours straight, or you work for 2 hours, get up, spend 20 minutes running around the block or doing jumping jacks or whatever, come back and work for another hour and whatever's left there, or my math is eluding me, 1 hour and 40 minutes, you would actually get more done than by sitting straight through for 4 hours. So you can actually get more done in less time if you stop now and then, get up, move around, drink some water, give your brain a rest. So your students, your children at home need to build in some downtime. Everybody needs a break. Do not schedule what they will do in downtime. Let them decide. They want to, and if you have a very young student, you might give them some choices. So, do they want to play? Do they want to play some games? Do they want to listen to music? Do they want to text their friends? And naps are good too. And I'll tell you, even your pets are going to need a nap during this very trying time. The other thing is that in school, students take gym and music and art and all kinds of other electives and courses that enrich them. And the problem can be that depending on what the school's capability is, they may not be able to be running virtual phys ed class. They may not be able to be running virtual music or virtual art. But that's something you can have your students build in at home. I was video conferencing with one of my consultants yesterday, and her child walked behind her and was drying a bowl. And I said, oh, what's going on at your house? And she said, well, they currently have the option of either doing shop with daddy or culinary arts and baking cookies. So they chose culinary arts and they baked cookies. Those are the kinds of things you can put in for some downtime from the academic, the core academic world. But build it in. Let your students build in. What can you do that has to do with art or music or physical activity? Now, if your school is providing you with that, just have your students build that in and do what the school is providing for them. But if not, just have the students figure it out to put some a downtime of these activities on their schedule. I cannot stress the importance of conversation. You're going to be in your house, your home, condo, wherever your apartment, wherever you're going to be all day with your kids. There's going to be that sense of we're all together, it's fine. You need to create some space and time to just sit and have a conversation. How was your day? Tell me about your day. Tell me about what you're learning. Tell me about what you're thinking. Tell me about what you want to learn next. Ask questions. Let the kids talk. Listen more than speak, although you want to engage somewhat in the conversation. It's not all about you, it's really all about them, so get them involved. And then use technology. Another thing we're doing back at IDE is we're having our older students hold book reads for the very young students. So they all get on together and the older students read the books, and then the older students are also responsible for coming up with some meaty questions to ask. I listened in on one the other day, and the reader was reading a book about crayons and the different colors of crayons. And when you come to the beige crayon, the crayon is kind of slumped over. And so she started by saying, so look at this crayon and tell me, how do you think the beige crayon is feeling? And then the younger kids started to say how they thought it was feeling. So and of course I have to like say that her mom was a language arts teacher, so she's got that going for her. But get kids talking across the web and engaging in conversations, or relatives of yours who you can't see in person right now. You know, engage in conversations. They feel good. They let kids talk about, they make kids feel good about what it is that they're doing. Even if you have that high school student who doesn't want to talk to you, there's always a conversational in. Even if it's like, oh, I saw this thing on the news, like, what do you think of that? Just prompt them to get talking. It's an important part. It's an important element of home-based learning. So there are no words for this page. We all exist as a body and a mind and a soul, and we've got to take care of all of those. So you can start working with your students to make sure that as they create schedules, they look at it to see, are they doing things that are enriching their physical body, their mind, and just their soul? So for instance, you might have students, there are a lot of online dance and exercise programs. You could get into yoga or meditation. You'll be doing your work. So the idea is to, or, you know, if you're fortunate enough, you could be fighting off Star Wars. Let's see, it's not the Jedis, is it the Stormtroopers, I think, that are the bad guys? But the idea is have your child think about balance. You know, we tell parents, don't let your children say, I'm going to do all my schoolwork in the morning and then I'll have the rest of the day to play. Or I'm going to play all day and I'll do my schoolwork at night. Balance it out. It's like a little bit of mind work, a little bit of schooling, and then a little bit of downtime, and then, you know, a little bit of reading over here. And so you've got to create that balance and help them learn to create the balance themselves. Oh, we all love a good celebration, a good high five. It just builds you up. So again, how do we get kids to celebrate when they're at home and there aren't as many people who might be fawning over them as they get in school? So just celebrate the process by giving your child a place on your wall, on your refrigerator, a cork board or something, and saying to them, this is your celebration zone. Put up whatever you're proud of. If you're working on something, you know, print it out, put it up, draw it, whatever, just post whatever you're proud of. That'll also give you a little conversation starter to be able to say, let's look at what you put up here today. Or you didn't put up anything today, why not? And then you tell your child, this is your space. Once you fill it up, then you have to figure out if you want to put something else up, what are you going to take down and why? Like, why does that one go and this one goes up? Was it that, well, you know, I thought this was good, but look, I'm doing so much better now, because now you can start to have students even track their own progress. Well, this is how I used to write, but look at what I'm doing now. So creating a celebration zone, a physical celebration zone, can be a great opportunity for kids to be reflecting on themselves and talking with you about their work. And then leverage your online connections. If you're on Facebook, where you can determine, you know, who gets to see things and not, post pictures of what your kids have done. So celebrate them and then show them how you've, you know, shared it with all of the family members. If you're on Twitter and you want to post, I'd suggest that you not necessarily post your child's face, but you could post what they've created, or you could post a picture from the back and put it up there, as well as, this is what, you know, so-and-so is doing in week 2 of home-based learning. And that will just get your child energized about the fact that home-based learning is something, and it is something for me to be learning how to do and be proud of and be working on, etc. And don't think that you as the parent have to run around figuring out what to celebrate. See, you want to shift everything over to the student. Let the student tell you what they want to celebrate, And then you just get to do the atta-girls and atta-boys rather than working so hard. So, this is really about letting a student be in charge of their own learning environment. Reflection is really important. We don't take enough time for it. I suggest having your student, get a journal if you've got an empty book around the house, or if you want to keep Amazon in business and order one, or if you want to just put some papers together and that, fold them over and that becomes a journal. Have your child reflect on their day, especially if you have them creating a schedule. How did your day go? Maybe you start in the morning. I might have that morning meeting and say, okay, so the first thing you want to do is write in your journal about the day. What are you hoping to accomplish today? How do you want to become a better home-based learner? How do you plan to connect with other people? Just reflect, put those goals in there. And at the end of the day, reflect on those goals. How did it go? What worked? What didn't work? How do you feel? Because that's an important question to ask as well. Not just how's your academic work going, but how do you feel? And another good option in these times that are very scary is to create a gratitude journal. What are you grateful for? Like, let's focus on the positive. Let's focus on all of the good things we have, as opposed to focusing on the fact that I can't go out with my friends. So creating a gratitude journal can definitely help. I wrote a book called Building Executive Function, the Missing Link to Student Achievement. And I strongly believe that there's a set of 40 skills that students need in order to succeed academically. And those skills, I'll post them up here so that you can just take a glance at them, but we will also post them on a website for you so that you'll have them available. And if you look at these, let's go over and look at cognitive flexibility, where we go 1, 2, 3, 3 down, seeing multiple sides to a situation. In any situation that happens in your house, whether it's a student is talking about what another student is doing, or what the teacher is doing, or siblings in the household are having a fight, or the student doesn't agree with you, great opportunity to stop and say, okay, wait a second. So let's look at this from the other side. How do you think I feel? How do you think the teacher, what do you think the teacher is going through? You're thinking about how much you're going through, that you have to be working from home. How do you think it is for your teacher, who has to be trying to teach from home? Let's look at both sides. Anytime that you can key into any of these 40 executive function skills, you will be helping your student progress academically. Because just think about it. If you're going to watch a video and try to learn from it, okay, look over in that first box. You have to be able to remember details, follow multiple steps, hold on to information while other information is coming in. You may have to, let's go over to the right side and down. You may have to be able to reflect on your goals, monitor performance, self-assess. Clearly, under inhibitory control, initiate a task and persist in that task. See, that's where scheduling helps. Because if students are just left to do whatever they want, they may stop something and get interrupted and go back and forth. But if they know they've got 15 minutes to accomplish this, and they don't accomplish it, now you're going to be asking them later, well, what happened? And that can help them learn how to initiate and persist in a task. So the key is, all of these different elements that you're putting in place at home can definitely help to build executive function skills. And if you want to take this paper and print it out and keep it nearby, these are great conversation starters and questions that you can ask students. Like, cause and effect relationship is all over the place. We just never really spend enough time asking kids about it. Like, well, if this happens, then what you think, what else, what could that cause? So we need to think about those kinds of things. Something as simple as, I'm making dinner. I was thinking of putting some salt on it, but if I put in sugar, what would happen? Let your young child say, no, don't put sugar on the steak. It'll make it sweet. You're building their brain. That's cause and effect relationship. So think about that as you are the overseer of your home-based learning environment, because the school's got the academics covered, but there's so many more things that students will be missing by not being right there with their teachers. So these are the pieces where you can fill in and also give them a sense of security and hope that all will be well. I hope that those 8 elements have been helpful for you. We have 3 websites that you want to go to. So, well, we have one that you'll want to go to, fortheparents.idecorp.com. We reiterate these 8 elements. We give you tips. We are putting more things up there every day. So if you don't see something today, or if you go and look at it today, come back next week and see what it is that we've added to that. The second one is more for teachers. DDAL is differentiated digital activity lists. Now, if as a parent, you're in the position to actually help your student create a set of activities that they will be working from, then that could be helpful for you. But for the most part, your schools are probably putting that all together. But it's a good site to go to anyway, because we created it. So, and then we've got a site called For the Kids. Now, that's not for children to go to, but that's just a lot of graphic organizers that focus on executive function and focus on higher order thinking that you could print out, or if you're a teacher in a school, that you could PDF and make digitally available to your students, so that you just constantly keep kids thinking about cause and effect, relationships, and how a design process I think we have in there, and lots of others that I can't remember right now. So please make sure that you head to those. The other thing that we will be doing is, I'm recording this one. We'll make this recording available through the site. So if you have some friends that weren't able to come and you think that this was worthwhile, then, and I see already somebody under question said, thank you for doing this. So if that's going to be helpful to you, anything that we can do to help our schools and our parents is good for us.